take something like the claim God exists.
Mm-hmm.
Now, skeptics these days will go, well, there's no evidence. And that'll be it. I just reject it because there's no evidence. But critical thinking is a bit more than that. It's about what kind of evidence should we expect to see, if it exists, if it doesn't exist, what are the claims being made about it, what can we say about those claims, how do we counter those claims, that kind of thing. It goes much broader.
Yeah, it's like when we say, what evidence would you accept for a God existing, for example, and they sit there and go, has to be scientific evidence. Yeah, but what are you expecting? Like, what do you mean by
It has to be
scientific?
testable and repeatable.
Yeah,
Well, what would that evidence look like?
yeah,
Well, repeatable, testable.
yeah. And it's almost like they're repeating a line, so it's almost they're not actually engaging that critical process of what they would think about in that particular instance.
Yeah.
Fair.
And the other thing as well is if you were thinking critically about it, I mean, you could theoretically critically come to it must be testable and repeatable evidence, but you should be able to explain why.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what kind of evidence that would look like you say. And if you take the God claims at face value, many of them won't be testable and repeatable. I mean, exactly what could you test? I mean, if God's immaterial, you can't test his physicality. You could kind of test claims that he has an effect on the world, but that wouldn't be testable and repeatable. That would be investigatable.
Yeah. It's almost akin to a conversation I had the other day about knowledge, and someone was asserting that knowledge had to be testable and repeatable. And I was like, well, I have knowledge that my dad's name was Steve, but there is no way I can test that or repeat that or do anything of the sort. I don't even have any birth certificates or anything like that, but I still have knowledge that his name was Steve. I have knowledge that he liked to spell it Steev because he felt the E on the end was getting lonely, But, it doesn't necessarily have to be testable and repeatable. They weren't really employing critical thinking skills there either. They were just following a particular line. And I think that is something that we see quite often with the online skeptic community itself, is that there's sort of these lines that are we're almost indoctrinated with, aren't we? That yes, the only thing that's valid is testable and repeatable. If it's not testable and repeatable, it's not evidence, it's not this, it's not that. So yeah, I suppose the way to get around that, though, how do you teach critical thinking?
That's a good question. I go with remember what I was saying about virtue being teachable. It's not teachable, it's learnable. I think I mean it's teachable, but it's also learned.
Yeah.
In that the people have to be paying attention and want to actually develop these skills and therefore put the time and effort into developing these skills and then go on to read or I mean if you want to call yourself a critical thinker and somebody opens a dialogue with you about such and such,
Mm-hmm.
then you will at least listen to it and sort of like the discussion we were having the other night. Once I have knowledge, belief becomes redundant.
Yeah.
And they just kept repeating it. Well, no, but I don't need to use the term belief once I have knowledge.
And you don't
So,
need to use the term belief. You don't
no,
need to
you
use it.
don't.
But you
But
still
it's
have
belief.
belief.
Yeah, belief doesn't become redundant, and because you still believe. But he kept trying to figure out this way of recovering and keeping that statement. So he wasn't really thinking critically about what he was saying. And he had no desire to actually want to change that statement. And I think in terms of critical thinking, you have to have that desire, and you have to be open to correction.